So what I thought we'd look into for today's video was go through the Championship and discuss who every team's most frustrating player is. Now, a player can be frustrating for several different reasons, really. Either they're always injured, they're not very reliable, they've got talent but they just don't show it all too often, they're inconsistent, they were bought for a lot of money but aren't really performing. There's a lot of factors that could go into this one, so I'd be interested to know from you guys, who would you say is your most frustrating player currently playing at your club? Before we do get into anything though, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors over at OneFootball. As always, their link will be in the top line of the description down below. Over on the OneFootball app, you can keep up to date with all the games that are going on tonight. Obviously, we did have Championship action going on last night as well. We'll discuss the games in a little bit more detail in my next video, where we go through all the matches that have taken place in midweek. But we certainly had some interesting ones. Birmingham beating Barnsley by 1-0. We had Blackburn smashing Hull 3-0. Brentford against Leeds ended level, 2 goalkeeping mistakes in that one. Charlton picked up a massive result against Forest, beating them by 1-0. So a lot of action went on last night and a lot of action going on tonight. You can keep up to date with all those games over on the OneFootball app. So like I said, link down below. But without any further ado, let's hop into this one. Luton Town Simon Sluga, after signing for a club record fee in the summer, it's not been the dream debut season for Simon Sluga. And at first it was a little bit funny with some of the mistakes he was making, but I feel a bit bad for the guy, to be completely honest. I think the lowest point was probably Derby away when he dropped 2 clangers in that game. He then got dropped from the squad. He was then brought back in, and since coming back in, still dropped a couple of howlers here and there, really. Obviously, Luton have conceded the most goals in the Championship so far this season. I don't feel as if he's always helped out by his back four, but he's a really frustrating player to watch, I feel like. With Barnsley, I've gone for Malik Wilks, a player so frustrating that they decided to loan him out in January, and he's now playing his football at Hull for the rest of the season. But when Barnsley signed Malik Wilks, I was so excited because at Doncaster, he was absolutely ripping defences apart in League One. A strong physical winger who had end product. He's not been able to transition that from his time at Barnsley though, and whether that's because of his attitude, I've heard some things about things like that. He started out fairly promisingly with his first few matches, but his forms quickly started to dwindle, and evidently they decided to loan him out because things weren't working there. Wigan Athletic Jamal Lowe, another winger similar to Malik Wilks, who's failed to make that step up from League One to the Championship. Now in the summer, I was saying that I thought this could have been one of the signings of the season. A lot of people were chasing Jamal Lowe. The likes of Leeds United, Brentford, Millwall were all interested in the Portsmouth winger. And before I made this video, I watched a compilation of him from his time at Portsmouth, and he absolutely ripped people apart. He's not been able to do that at all so far for Wigan, and you feel like his confidence has completely been shot to bits. He's only scored 2 goals for Wigan so far this season. Maybe it's the system they're playing, but he seems a shadow of his former self, and Wigan fans know that there is a player in there because of how well he did from his time at Portsmouth. But watch him at Wigan now, he doesn't look like he's shown for the ball too often or willing to take on his man, shooting from distance. It's a really funny one because I think we all know there's a player in there, but it's been a really frustrating season so far. Stoke City Tom Ince, a player who has all the natural ability in the world, but just doesn't always seem too bothered to show it. I think that, like a lot of other Stoke players, his performances have had a slightly upward inflection ever since O'Neill has come in, but on the whole, Tom Ince is such a frustrating player to watch. You know, from his time at Derby, was probably one of the most prestigious wingers in the league with all the ability he's got. At Stoke though, he's one of those sort of high earning players who doesn't always seem to be giving it his all, but when he does show up for like 3 or 4 times a season, he can be quality, and that's where the frustration comes from. With Huddersfield, I think it has to be Kachunga. My memories of Kachunga from Huddersfield's promotion season, I remember him being absolutely brilliant for them. He bagged 12 goals for them that season, and as I don't watch all too much Premier League football, I caught Huddersfield now and again while they were in the Premier League, but watching Kachunga this season compared to their promotion season, it's like 2 completely different players. He's fallen off so much. He did score at the weekend, and maybe that'll get his confidence back up, but quite similar to a lot of the other wingers that we've mentioned on this list so far, just doesn't seem to be the player that he once was. A really frustrating player to watch at times. He has missed quite a few sitters so far this season that we've mentioned on the Championship roundup, but Huddersfield fans, what have you made of Kachunga so far this season? Charlton Athletic Naby Sarr. Now, Naby Sarr goes from looking like Virgil van Dijk one week to a Sunday League player the next, and there's no in between with Sarr. You never know what you're going to get from him. In midweek, he was absolutely phenomenal against Nottingham Forest. That ball in for the Lyle Taylor goal was absolutely exquisite from the left-hand side, but he goes from being unbelievable one moment to being a liability the next, and you never know what you're going to get from him. So I feel like he's a bit of a frustrating one to watch from Charlton fans, just because you never know what you're going to get. When he's on his game, fantastic. When he's not, can be a bit of a disaster. Middlesbrough, Bryce Sombolonga, just quite an inconsistent player, really. I'd say that back in his time from Forest, he was probably like one of the elite strikers in the league, and obviously then made his move over to Borough. Still scored a fair few goals under the Tony Pulis regime, which was going to be no easy feat for a striker with how defensive they played. But with a Sombolonga week to week, he can go from something absolutely brilliant to the next week missing a couple of sitters, and he has been quite prone to doing that lately for Borough. So British Zambalonga is quite a frustrating one because I feel like there's more we could be getting from him. QPR, that's going to be Joe Lumley. Joe Lumley, when he first took on the gloves of replacing Alex Smithies, I was actually really excited for what the future could hold for him. I thought he did really well in that season, but so far this season for QPR, it's been a bit of a disaster for the goalkeeper, dropping a few clangers here and there. He was dropped from the side for quite a while, and there has been a growing frustration among the QPR fans with Joe Lumley. Reading George Puskas, I don't think there can be any arguments about this one really. When Puskas came into the league, there was a whole lot of hype surrounding him and a lot of excitement. They actually started out really well, remembering back to that game that he had against Cardiff when he absolutely ripped them apart, but he has missed some gilt-edged chances so far this season, let me tell you. We then thought that Puskas was back when he bagged that hat-trick against Wigan, where we were thinking, wow, this is the Puskas that everyone was expecting. He's got 6 goals so far this season, but since that game at Wigan when he scored a hat-trick, he's not scored since in the league. So George Puskas, very up and down in terms of his levels, very frustrating player for Reading. Hull City, John Terrell, frustrating for the fact that he always seems to be injured, because I think that John Terrell might be one of the biggest sort of unknown ballers in the league. Whenever he is fit, he's absolutely quality, such a tidy player on the ball. So far this season, he's only managed to make 3 starts for Hull and has been injured for the rest of the time. I believe he's back in training now, but still has 3 assists in the limited game time that he has played so far this season. And to be honest, over his whole career so far, he's only really made a handful of appearances for them. I want to see him get a consistent run in the team without picking up any injuries, because if Hull fans do see that, I think they've got a really quality player on their hands. With Birmingham, I was edging towards Harley Dean, to be honest, the captain there, who's dropped quite a few clangers so far this season. I'd be interested to know from Birmingham fans, do you think you're a better side with or without Harley Dean? Let me know in the comments down below. But another player with Birmingham who I wanted to bring your attention to was Jefferson Montero, another player who seems to be sort of made out of paper, can barely last 90 minutes, has all the natural ability in the world, but just doesn't always show that. Derby County, Tom Lawrence. It's actually quite funny that I'm making this video when Tom Lawrence is actually banging form. I thought he was absolutely fantastic at the weekend, scored that brilliant goal against Swansea, and to be honest, over his last sort of 4 or 5 games, he's been putting in some decent performances for Derby, but over his whole career so far at Derby, I do feel this is a quite frustrating player really, because his levels are very up and down. When he made his move over there from Leicester, I thought Derby had a fantastic player on their hands. Even at the start of this season, I thought that this year would be the coming of Tom Lawrence really, you know, without the likes of Harry Wilson and Mason Mount, a lot of their creativity would fall on his shoulders. He started the season out brilliantly with that game against Huddersfield where he bagged the brace on the opening day, but has been so up and down. The frustration comes from Derby fans because they all know the player that he is capable of being. It's just consistently he's not able to produce that week to week, but maybe as we do find him in a good piece of form at the moment, he can continue that for the rest of the season. Sheffield Wednesday, Jordan Rhodes. In January it looked like they may be moving him on, but they weren't able to do so in the end. One of the big earners there, and Jordan Rhodes, his career has been a really interesting one, because back in the day was one, if not the most prolific striker at this level. You know, for Blackburn Rovers, scored over 20 goals in 3 consecutive seasons. And Wednesday fans, what do you think? Have you not utilised him in the right way, or has it been Rhodes himself who hasn't applied himself in the right way since he's been at Sheffield Wednesday? Millwall, Conor Mahoney, I don't necessarily think he's really fit into the way that they played so far this season. Just the 1 goal for Mahoney. I was quite excited when he was brought over. He started a few games at the start of the season, but has since more been that sort of impact player off the bench for them. Cardiff have gone for Glatzel, big money move in the summer. A lot of their forward options were sort of pinned on Glatzel being good this season, and it's not really happened for him. Just the 4 goals so far this season. I don't think that Cardiff necessarily always play to his strengths, but he doesn't always help himself whenever I have seen him play. He looks a little bit limited as a striker at times, and Cardiff aren't the club who create the most chances for their striker, I don't think, but at the same time when I'm watching Cardiff sometimes I feel like he could be offering them a little bit more. Like, I feel like Cardiff are more effective when they do have like Patterson or maybe Ward up front opposed to Glatzel. Swansea was a tough one to go for because obviously they got a very young squad. For the most frustrating player, I've gone for Bertrand Salina, not because I don't rate him as a player, because I actually think he's probably one of Swansea's best, certainly one of their most creative players, but there's been that whole debate around Salina so far this season as to where's his best position. Is it out on that left hand side, or is it playing in that number 10 role? You know, when he is out on the left, he can't always influence the game as much as he would like to. You know, when Swansea came to Deepdale, he was quite isolated out there, and as creative players usually are, you know, they very much dip in and out of form, and I feel like Salina definitely falls under that category. 2 goals, 2 assists for Salina so far this season. Definitely needs to be playing week to week for them, but can be a little bit frustrating at times for me. Blackburn Rovers, Sam Gallagher, another big money move from the summer, signed for around about £5 million, just scored the 3 goals so far this season. Sam Gallagher's been a bit of a weird one, to be honest, at Blackburn so far this season. I think a lot of their attacking threat has come from Adam Armstrong. With Sam Gallagher, he's sort of at times been like shoehorned into the side when Moby plays him out on that right hand side. I've seen some really good performances from Gallagher, but they've been few and far between so far this season. I think that's where the frustration comes from with Blackburn Rovers fans, especially given how much they paid for him. Bristol City, Casey Palmer, no doubt one of the most talented players in that Bristol City squad, but doesn't always show it. He started out the season fantastically well for them. He was absolutely running the show for them. Some of the assists he was picking up early on this season were absolutely fantastic. Like, his passing range and vision is superb. It's second to none in the Championship, but then out of nowhere, he sort of just stopped being picked from the team. He then picked up a couple of injuries. There was then, over December, that whole rumour going around that him and Lee Johnston had fallen out, and since then, we're not really seeing all too much of Casey Palmer. I know that he has been injured recently, but he's another one who falls into that got loads of talent, but is a bit inconsistent category. Forest North End, Shawnee Maguire just doesn't quite seem to be the same player that he once was. Just the 4 goals for Maguire so far this season. He's played a lot of the season out on that left-hand side, and the frustration comes from the fact that at times he's pushed off the ball a little too easily, and when he does get into those goal-scoring positions, just doesn't seem to be that same clinical striker who he bought a few years ago. Injuries do seem to have affected it. I think that a bit of time on the bench and coming on as an impact sub may do Maguire good. Another quite frustrating one for North End is Billy Bowden, by the fact that he's just never fit for us. He always has amazing pre-seasons, and then we get into the season and he always picks up an injury. So North End have got a couple, I think. Nottingham Forest, João Carvalho. What has happened to João Carvalho? When Forest first signed him last summer, he looked like one of the best playmakers in the Championship. Like, he started his time out there absolutely fantastically. Then towards the end of last season, sort of fell off a little bit, didn't really fit into the system, and so far this season hasn't really got going, but he's not really been given much of a chance. He's only made 8 starts in the league for Forest so far this season, and then making 11 appearances off the bench, got the 1 goal and the 1 assist in that time. I mean, looking back to Forest game last night against Charlton, that seemed like the perfect opportunity to introduce someone like João Carvalho, but Lamucci seems reluctant to do so. So it's an interesting situation with Carvalho at the moment. Got all the talent in the world, but doesn't always show it. But then again, has he been given the chance to? Brentford was another one who I was a bit stuck with who to go for, really. I've gone for Sergi Canos, someone who you never quite know what you're going to get from him. For the majority of this season, he's actually been out injured, and from the start of the season, he's actually playing quite a bit of his football at wing-back, which was an interesting choice at the time, but did fairly well in that position. But Sergi Canos, someone who fits into that Brentford system, just someone who I feel like at times could have gone on to push his game a bit further forward. Fulham, Alfie Mawson, now out for the rest of the season, I believe, with an injury, but overall, a really frustrating player to watch, given the amount of money that Fulham spent on him. I think 15 million rising up to 20 million they paid for Mawson from Swansea. Have they got value for money? I don't think so, and I don't think that any Fulham fans would suggest they had got value for money either. He dropped quite a few clangers at the start of the season when Fulham were looking really shaky defensively, and since Michael Hector's come into the team, I think he's completely transformed their back four. So Mawson, quite a frustrating player at Fulham. Leeds United, Patrick Bamford, although I do think you can make an argument for Kiko Casilla given how he's playing at the moment. You know, that mistake against Brentford, no idea what he was doing, and he really has dropped off since the start of the season. But Patrick Bamford, no striker in the Championship has missed more big chances than Bamford so far this season. He does have 12 goals, and now and again shows what he's capable of. You know, that game against Millwall where he bagged the brace in that one and sort of gave a bit back to the Leeds fans. Since then, though, his form's dropped right back off again, and week to week, you never know what you're going to get from him. With the amount of chances that Leeds create per game, Bamford, you know, should be on course for like 20-25 goals this season, but that's just not the case with how many he does squander. The frustration also comes from the fact that Bamford seems to be sort of undroppable in that Leeds system. Augustin's obviously building up his fitness now, but when he is fully fit, I'm really intrigued to see if Bielsa ever will drop Patrick Bamford. I'm finishing it off with West Brom. I'm going to go for Kenneth Zohore, another big money move coming over to West Brom for around about £8 million, and you feel like with the options that West Brom have going forward, that £8 million really could have been invested into a different type of striker. You know, you've got Austin Zohore, who are very similar in the way they play, and they really tend to someone like Hal Robson-Kanu as the alternative to either of them. And so far this season, he's only hit the back of the net 3 times in the league, albeit he has had fairly limited game time, just making the 5 starts for West Brom and then 10 appearances off from the bench. But when Semi Ajayi's outscoring him as a centre-back, it's been a bit of a frustrating season for Zohore, I think it's fair to say. But guys, there you have it. There is every Championship club's most frustrating player in my opinion. So do you guys agree? Let me know what you think of this one in the comments down below. But apart from that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Feel free to leave in the comments down below what you made of last night's games, or if you are going to any of them tonight. But apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.